Admiral Hyun-woo Kim stared at the tactical display with tired eyes. Red dots filled the screen like a disease spreading across space. Each dot was a Vraxian ship, and there were hundreds of them moving toward human colonies. His fleet of 30 Earth ships looked very small against such numbers. "Sir, incoming message from the Council," said his communications officer. The young woman's voice shook slightly. Everyone knew the humans were losing this war badly. Hyun-woo nodded. "Put it through." The blue hologram of Council Speaker Vex Tar appeared on the bridge. The alien's forearms moved in what humans had learned meant concern. "Admiral Kim, we have reviewed your requests for reinforcements." "And?" Hyun-woo asked, though he already knew the answer from the alien's tone. "The Council has decided to send additional forces to the core systems. Your sector will receive supplies and ammunition within the week." Hyun-woo felt his jaw tighten. "Speaker, we don't need supplies. We need ships. We need soldiers. The Vraxians are pushing toward the Kepler colonies. 3 million humans live there." "The Council understands your concern. However, our military advisors believe your current forces are sufficient for a defensive action." The connection ended before Hyun-woo could respond. He stood in silence for a moment, watching the red dots move closer to human space. 30 ships against hundreds. The Council called it sufficient. 3 systems away, Commander Ji-won Park was having her own problems. She commanded the defense of Kepler 442, where the largest human colony outside Earth was located. Her 12 ships were all that stood between the Vraxians and 3 million civilians. "Commander, we're getting evacuation requests from the surface," reported Lieutenant Kang-ho Lee. "The civilian government wants to start moving people to the transport ships." Ji-won looked at her tactical screen. The evacuation ships were large and slow. They would need protection to reach the jump points safely. "How many transports do we have?" 47 ships, sir, but they can only take about 200,000 people total. The math was simple and horrible. Even if they could save some, most would have to stay behind. Ji-won had been trained for many types of battles, but not for choosing who lived and who died. "Send a message to Admiral Kim. Tell him we need those evacuation routes the Council promised." The Council had made many promises about safe passage for human civilians. They had promised escort ships and secure jump coordinates. They had promised that no human colony would be abandoned to the Vraxians. Dr. Taemin Lee knew about promises too. As one of the few humans working inside the Council's main research facility, he heard things that were not meant for human ears. He worked late most nights in his small laboratory, officially studying star formation patterns. Unofficially, he was trying to understand why the Council seemed so calm about the Vraxian advance. The answer came to him by accident. He was walking past a conference room when he heard familiar voices speaking in the common trade language. Through the slightly open door, he could see several Council members around a large table. "The human problem will resolve itself within the year," one was saying. "The Vraxians have agreed to stop their advance once they reach the Sol system boundary." "And the colonies?" asked another voice. "Acceptable losses. The humans are too aggressive, too unpredictable. Better to let the Vraxians have their space and maintain peace with the core worlds." Taemin felt cold spreading through his chest. He carefully moved closer to hear more. "The evacuation requests? We'll provide coordinates, of course. The Vraxians have agreed to allow some civilian ships to escape, but the military vessels must be eliminated. They pose too much risk to galactic stability." Taemin understood now. The Council wasn't trying to save humanity. They were helping to destroy it. The promised reinforcements would never come. The safe evacuation routes were traps. The coordinates would lead human ships directly into Vraxian ambush points. He backed away from the door carefully and returned to his lab. His hands shook as he began encoding a message for Admiral Kim. The communication would have to be very careful. The Council monitored all official channels. Captain So-Young Choi was preparing her ship for another supply run when the encrypted message arrived. She commanded one of the faster human ships, and her job was to keep the outer colonies supplied with ammunition and medical equipment. The message was strange. It came through back channels and was signed with codes she recognized as military intelligence. The content made her blood turn cold. All evacuation coordinates compromised. Council has made deal with Vraxians. Human space to be abandoned. Do not use official routes. Repeat, do not use official routes. So Young read the message 3 times before it really sank in. Then she called her first officer over. Change our course, she said quietly. We're not going to the supply depot. Sir? Where are we going? To warn the evacuation ships. And then we're going to find out if this message is true. The truth came faster than anyone expected. The first evacuation convoy from Kepler 442 followed the official council coordinates exactly. 47 ships carrying 200,000 human civilians jumped to what should have been a safe rally point. They jumped directly into a Vraxian battle fleet. The massacre lasted less than an hour. The civilian ships had no weapons and no armor. The Vraxians destroyed them methodically, making sure there were no survivors to tell anyone what had happened. Commander Jiwon Park received the news through emergency channels. Her communications. Officer was crying as she read the report. All ships lost, Commander. No survivors detected. The Vraxians were waiting for them. Jiwon stared at her tactical display. The red dots were still moving toward her position. Behind her, on the planet below, 3 million people were waiting for evacuation. There were no more transport ships coming. The Council had made sure of that. Send a message to all human forces, she said slowly. Tell them the Council has betrayed us. Tell them we're on our own now. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim received that message while he was planning his next defensive action. He read it twice, then called his senior officers to the bridge. Ladies and gentlemen, he said when they were all assembled, we have a problem. It appears our allies have decided we're expendable. He explained what they had learned about the Council's deal with the Vraxians. He told them about the trapped evacuation ships and the promised reinforcements that would never come. So what do we do now, sir? Asked his tactical officer. Hyun-woo looked at the display showing his 30 ships against hundreds of enemy vessels. The odds were impossible. The Council expected them to die here, forgotten and alone. We do what humans always do, he said finally. We survive, and then we make sure this never happens again. None of them knew it yet, but far away in the dark. Between stars, other humans were already working on that second part. The Council thought they had eliminated humanity's future. They had only guaranteed that humanity's revenge would be absolute. Fleet Admiral Minho Jang had been expecting this day for 5 years. Not the exact details, but the basic shape of it. He had always known that someday the galaxy would decide humanity was too dangerous to live. His secret base was hidden in the Void Nebula, a region of space so filled with radiation and debris that most species avoided it completely. Perfect for hiding the largest military project in human history. Admiral, we're receiving the emergency signals from the outer colonies, reported Commander Yeon-Soo Kang. It's begun. Minho nodded slowly. How many ships do we have ready for combat? 237, sir. Another 150 are still in construction, but they won't be ready for months. It will have to be enough. Minho walked to the observation deck and looked out at his secret fleet. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Black as space itself, with lines that seemed to bend light around them. They looked more like weapons than vehicles. These were the Reaper-class dreadnoughts, and they represented everything humanity had learned about war in the past century. More importantly, they carried technology that the Council had forbidden to all younger species. Engineer Hyojin Song was in the main construction bay, working on the final adjustments to the null drive systems. The drives were based on precursor technology that human archaeologists had found on dead worlds throughout the galaxy. The Council had ordered all such artifacts destroyed, claiming they were too dangerous. Humanity had kept some anyway. The phase variance is stable, Hyojin reported to her team. We can maintain partial phase shift for up to 6 hours without system strain. What that meant in simple terms was that human ships could become ghosts. They could move through normal space while being almost impossible to detect. Enemy sensors would see nothing. Enemy weapons would find no target to lock onto. "How many ships have the new drives installed?" asked Captain Dong Hyun Ko as he entered the construction bay. "All of the Reaper-class ships, and about half of the smaller vessels," Hyejin replied. "We're working as fast as we can, but the technology is complex." Dong Hyun commanded the first completed Reaper-class ship, the Vengeance. It was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. More importantly, it carried the new weapons that Hyejin's team had developed. The Stellar Lance was the most frightening. It could reach across light years to touch a star's core and make it burn hotter, much hotter, hot enough to cook entire solar systems. "Captain, we're receiving refugees from the outer colonies," announced Lieutenant Yoon-Soo Park over the communication system. "Captain Choi's ship just arrived with survivors from the evacuation convoy massacre." So Young Choi had managed to save 3 transport ships by warning them about the trap. 3 ships out of 47. She brought news of the betrayal and something more valuable: detailed intelligence about Council and Vraxian positions. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," So Young reported to Admiral Min-ho. "The Council is openly coordinating with Vraxian forces. They've given them star charts of all human colonies." "What about our people in Council space?" Min-ho asked. "Most are dead or missing, but Dr. Lee is still active. He's been sending intelligence packets through the Archaeological Research Network. Dr. Tae-Min Lee had found a way to hide military intelligence inside reports about ancient civilizations. To outside observers, he was still just a researcher studying dead worlds. In reality, he was mapping every Council facility and every Vraxian staging area. His latest report contained coordinates for the Council's primary weapons research stations. These were the facilities where they had developed the biological weapons used against human colonies. They would be among the first targets when the time came. Major Seung-ho Yoon was in charge of turning refugees into soldiers. Every human who arrived at the hidden base was angry and hurt. Most had lost family members to Vraxian attacks or Council betrayals. Yoon's job was to focus that anger into something useful. "You want revenge," he told each group of new arrivals. "Good. Revenge is a tool, and we're going to teach you how to use it properly." The training was intense. Human Marines learned to fight in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, and in the confined spaces of enemy ships. They practiced boarding actions and siege warfare. Most importantly, they learned to show no mercy to enemies who had shown none to human children. "Remember," Major Yoon would tell them during training, "they chose this war when they decided we were acceptable losses. We're just going to finish what they started." Agent Yoo-Jin Nam had managed to infiltrate the Vraxian command structure by posing as a slave trader. It was dangerous work, but it provided intelligence that no other source could match. Her latest report was disturbing. The Vraxians weren't just planning to take human space, they were planning to take human prisoners for their slave markets. Millions of humans would be sold throughout the galaxy as workers and entertainment. "The Council knows about the slave trade," Yoo-Jin reported during a secret communication. "They've agreed to look the other way as long as the Vraxians don't. Attack core world shipping." That information went directly to Admiral Min-ho's planning staff. It would influence target selection when the counterattack began. Anyone who profited from human slavery would pay the same price as those who had ordered humanity's destruction. The hidden fleet continued to grow. Ships arrived from Earth's outer system facilities, carrying weapons and personnel that had been secretly prepared for years. Other ships came from human colonies that had managed to avoid Vraxian detection. Each new arrival brought more stories of Council betrayal. The Kepler 442 colony had been abandoned after Commander Ji-won Park's desperate defense finally collapsed. The survivors spoke of watching orbital defense platforms shut down because the Council had remotely deactivated them. "They didn't just refuse to help us," reported one survivor. They actively helped our enemies kill us. Tactical Officer Yunji Bei was busy mapping targets throughout Council space. Her job was to identify every government facility, every military base, and every research station that had played a role in humanity's betrayal. The list was long, very long. "Admiral, I've identified over 4,000 priority targets," she reported to Minho. "That includes military bases, government centers, research facilities, and economic infrastructure." "What about civilian populations?" Minho asked. "We're still analyzing which species actively supported the betrayal versus those who were just following orders. The Altarians definitely knew what was happening. The Kethvar tried to warn us through back channels. That intelligence would determine which species survived the coming war and which would join humanity in extinction." Lieutenant Commander Chang Wook-shin led the reconnaissance missions that confirmed what everyone suspected. The galaxy had grown comfortable with its new peace. The Council believed their own propaganda about human extinction. Defense networks were being scaled back. Patrol schedules had become predictable. "They're acting like the war is already over," Chang Wook reported after his latest mission. "Most of their military forces are being redeployed to patrol shipping lanes and suppress local independence movements." "Good," Minho replied. "Overconfidence has destroyed more empires than any weapon." Communications specialist Nayoung Huang intercepted messages that revealed the full scope of Council crimes. It wasn't just humanity they had betrayed. At least 12 other species had been sacrificed to maintain galactic stability. The Kethvar. Homeworld had been virus-bombed when they refused to accept Council authority. The crystalline Zephyrians had been shattered and sold as decorative materials to core world collectors. The peaceful Mithrin had simply vanished overnight, their entire species deleted from official records. "They're calling it the New Galactic Order," Nayoung reported. "Complete peace through complete control. Any species that shows independence gets eliminated." This information changed the nature of the coming war. It wouldn't just be revenge for humanity. It would be justice for all the forgotten species that the Council had murdered for convenience. Chief Scientist Jae-hyun Roh completed the installation of quantum cascade weapons on the command ships. These devices could cause chain reactions in subspace itself, turning enemy fleets into expanding spheres of destruction. "The weapons are ready," he reported to the fleet commanders. "But I want everyone to understand what we're about to unleash. These weapons don't just destroy ships. They unravel the basic structure of matter in the target area." Master Sergeant Sun Woo-go finished training the assault marines who would board Council stations. Their job would be to ensure that no Council leaders escaped justice through evacuation or suicide. "We've studied the psychology profiles of every major Council figure," Sun Woo reported. "Most will try to negotiate when they realize what's happening. Some will try to run. A few will try to destroy evidence. We're prepared for all of it." The final preparations were complete. The hidden fleet was ready to move. Every weapon was loaded, every target was mapped, and every soldier knew exactly what needed to be done. Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the assembled fleet. 237 ships that nobody in the galaxy knew existed. 18 months had passed since the last human distress signal went silent. The galaxy celebrated what the Council called the New Peace. Trade routes that had been disrupted by the war were flowing freely again. The Vraxian Empire had settled into their expanded territory and seemed content with their conquests. On the core worlds, citizens went about their daily lives without thinking about the extinct species called humanity. The news networks had stopped reporting on the war months ago. Most people assumed it had ended with the obvious result. The primitive humans had been defeated by superior civilization. Council Speaker Vextar gave regular speeches about the success of their new approach to galactic stability. "By removing the destabilizing elements," he would say, "we have achieved a lasting peace that benefits all member species." Nobody mentioned that the destabilizing elements had been entire civilizations. The Council had grown comfortable in their new power. Defense spending had been reduced by 30% as military resources were redirected to economic expansion and internal security. The vast fleets that had once patrolled the Outer Rim were now concentrated around the wealthy core systems. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim watched the Council's public broadcasts from his command ship, hidden in the dark between stars. His fleet had grown to over 400 vessels, all invisible to galactic sensors thanks to the null drive technology. "They really believe we're all dead," said Commander Ji-won Park, who had escaped the fall of Kepler 442 with a handful of survivors. She now commanded one of the new Reaper-class ships, its black hull scarred by the modifications her crew had made. "Good," Hyunwoo replied. "Dead enemies don't need to be watched carefully." Tactical Officer Yoon-ji Bae had spent the past year mapping every important facility in Council space. Her intelligence network now included human agents who had infiltrated dozens of critical installations by posing as refugees from non-human conflicts. "The defense grid around Galactic Central has been reduced to 12 patrol ships," she reported, during the daily briefing. 18 months ago, they had over 200 ships protecting the Council headquarters. "What about the Vraxian positions?" asked Admiral Min-ho, whose secret fleet had finally merged with the survivors from the outer colonies. "They've spread themselves thin, trying to govern human space. Most of their military is tied up in occupation duties and slave processing operations." The mention of slave processing made the briefing room go quiet. Agent Yoo-jin Nam had provided detailed reports about what happened to human survivors. The lucky ones died quickly. The others were sold in markets throughout the galaxy, their children bred for labor and entertainment. Lieutenant Commander Chang Wook Shin had completed his reconnaissance of the major shipping routes. His stealth ships had mapped every trade, convoy, every passenger liner, and every government transport in the core systems. "They've become predictable," he reported. "The same routes, the same schedules, the same escort patterns. They're not expecting any threats." "Because there aren't supposed to be any threats left," noted Captain Dong-hyun Ko. "According to their own propaganda, they've eliminated all the dangerous species." Communications specialist Na Young Hwang intercepted transmissions that revealed just how secure the Council felt. Internal messages discussed reducing military spending even further. Some Council members were proposing to convert former military bases into civilian research facilities. "They're planning a victory celebration next month," Na-young reported. "The anniversary of what they're calling the final pacification. Every major Council figure will be at Galactic Central for the ceremony." Admiral Hyun-woo felt a cold smile cross his face. "How convenient." Dr. Tae-min Lee continued his work. Inside the Council's research network, now focused on mapping the locations of every war criminal who had participated in humanity's destruction. His archaeological cover gave him access to historical records, including classified files about the genocide. "I've identified the locations of 43 Council members who voted for the extermination order," he reported through encrypted channels. "I also have the names of every Vraxian commander who participated in civilian massacres." "Add them to the target list," Admiral Hyunwoo replied. "We want to make sure none of them escape justice." The human fleet approached their targets in perfect silence. The null drive technology made them invisible to every sensor system in the galaxy. They moved like ghosts between the stars, positioning themselves for simultaneous strikes across 200 systems. Captain So-young Choi commanded a strike force targeting the Altarian hegemony, the species that had been most vocal about humanity, being too dangerous to live. Her 12 ships took position around their 3 major industrial worlds, waiting for the signal to attack. "Sensors show normal civilian traffic," reported her tactical officer. "No military patrols detected. Their defense grid is running on automatic." "They're so confident," So-young said quietly. "They really think there's no one left to threaten them." Major Sung Ho-yoon prepared his assault marines for the boarding operations that would begin once the shooting started. His troops were equipped with weapons and armor that had been upgraded with captured precursor technology. "Remember the briefings," he told his soldiers. "We're not just fighting for revenge. We're fighting for every species the Council has murdered. The Kethvar, the Zephyrians, the Mithrans, and all the others whose names were erased from history." Thus, Marines were ready. They had trained for this moment for over a year, and they had nothing left to lose. Every one of them had lost family or friends to Council treachery. Engineer Heejin's Song made final adjustments to the Stellar Lance weapon systems. These were the most terrifying weapons humanity had ever built, capable of igniting stars from impossible distances. "All Lance systems are charged and ready," she reported to the fleet commanders. "Target coordinates have been locked in. We can fire on command." Chief Scientist Jae Hyun-ro completed the deployment of quantum cascade devices throughout the strike fleet. These weapons would ensure that enemy fleets were destroyed completely, with no possibility of survivors carrying word of the attack to other systems. "The cascade charges are synchronized across all ships," he reported. "When we activate them, the chain reaction will propagate through subspace faster than any communication system." Master Sergeant Sun Woo-go reviewed the intelligence files on high-value targets one final time. His special operations teams would be responsible for capturing or eliminating the individuals who had ordered humanity's destruction. Priority targets include Council Speaker Vextar, Vraxian War Leader Thekmor, and Altarian Prime Minister Zalthek, he briefed his team leaders. "These individuals must not be allowed to escape or commit suicide. We need them alive for the war crimes trials." The final positioning was complete. Human ships hung invisible in the darkness around their targets, waiting for the synchronized attack to begin. The galaxy continued its daily routine, unaware that humanity's ghost fleet was preparing to rise from the grave. Admiral Hyun-woo Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display that showed 400 human ships positioned for maximum destruction. In a few hours, the galaxy would learn that reports of humanity's death had been greatly exaggerated. "All ships report ready," announced his communications officer. "Signal from the Void Nebula base," added the tactical officer. "Admiral Min-ho reports that Operation Nemesis is authorized to proceed." Hyun-woo nodded slowly. 18 months of careful planning and preparation were about to pay off. The Council's new peace was built on the bones of murdered civilizations, and now those ghosts were coming to collect the debt. "Send the activation signal to all units," he ordered. "Execute Operation Nemesis." Throughout the galaxy, human commanders received the same message at exactly the same moment. The synchronized attack would begin in exactly 1 hour, giving every strike force time to make final preparations. The Council's victory celebration was scheduled to begin in 6 hours. By then, there would be no Council left to celebrate anything. Captain Dong Hyun-ko checked his ship's weapons one final time. The Vengeance carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, and it would need every bit of that power for what was coming. "All systems green," reported his tactical officer. "Null drive is maintaining perfect stealth. Target locks are confirmed." "Good," Dong Hyun replied. "In 1 hour, we remind the galaxy why they were right to fear us." The countdown began. Across 200 systems, human ships prepared to emerge from the darkness and bring justice to those who had betrayed them. The galaxy's long peace was about to end, and humanity's long revenge was about to begin. In the depths of space, invisible and silent, 400 ships full of ghosts waited for their moment to strike back at the living. The attack began at exactly 800 Galactic Standard Time across 200 star systems. 400 human ships materialized from the void like vengeful spirits, their black hulls suddenly visible as their null drives deactivated. Admiral Hyun-woo Kim watched his tactical display as red warning lights began flashing across the galaxy. Every major council installation, every Vraxian stronghold, and every species that had participated in humanity's betrayal was under simultaneous attack. "All units report successful phase-in," announced his communications officer. No enemy forces. Detected the approach. Begin the cleansing, Hyun-woo ordered quietly. At the Vraxian capital of Thekmor, Captain So-young Choi led 50 Reaper-class dreadnoughts against the homeworld that had orchestrated humanity's destruction. The planet's defense fleet never even had time to raise shields before the stellar lances began firing. 3 artificial suns ignited in Thekmor's upper atmosphere as the lances touched the planet's core. The world's surface became a sea of molten glass in less than 6 hours, taking with it the 8 billion Vraxians who had cheered for human extinction. Target eliminated, So-young reported over the tactical network. Beginning secondary strikes on evacuation fleets. The Vraxian government tried to evacuate their leadership to secondary worlds, but human ships were waiting at every jump point. The quantum disruptors didn't just destroy the fleeing vessels, they unraveled them at the molecular level, leaving nothing but expanding clouds of component atoms. Fleet Admiral Min-ho Jang personally oversaw the assault on Galactic Central, the massive space station that housed the Council's primary headquarters. The station had once been home to 50 million representatives from across the galaxy. Deploy the boarding teams, Min-ho ordered as his ships surrounded the station. I want every council member captured alive. Master Sergeant Sun Woo-go led the first wave of assault marines into the station's docking bays. The defenders were caught completely off guard. Most had been preparing for the victory celebration that was supposed to begin in a few hours. Seal all escape routes, Sun Woo ordered his teams over the communication network. No one leaves this station without our permission. The human marines moved through the station methodically, section by section. They had detailed maps of every corridor and every important office. More importantly, they had photographs and biological data for every council member who had voted for humanity's destruction. Council Speaker Vex Tar was found in his private chambers, desperately trying to establish communication with other council worlds. The four-armed alien looked up in terror as armored human soldiers entered his room. This is impossible, Vex Tar said in the common trade language. Your species is extinct. We confirmed it ourselves. Extinction is a temporary condition, replied Sergeant Jin-woo Park as he secured the alien leader. Revenge is forever. The Altarian hegemony fell in 4 days. Commander Ji-won Park used their own defense networks against them, turning orbital platforms into kinetic bombardment weapons that reduced their industrial worlds to craters. The species that had called humans barbaric discovered what true brutality looked like when it was applied with surgical precision. Every military base, every government facility, and every research installation was destroyed with methodical efficiency. They're requesting surrender terms, reported Ji-won's communications officer on the second day of the assault. Tell them, we don't negotiate with species that participate in genocide, Ji-won replied. Continue the bombardment. Captain Dong-hyun Ko led the systematic destruction of the Vraxian fleet, hunting down every ship that had participated in the massacre of human civilians. His ship, the Vengeance, had been equipped with tracking systems that could follow subspace, signatures across light years. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, announced his tactical officer. Vraxian heavy cruiser, configuration matches vessels present at the Kepler 442 massacre. Target identified, Dong-hyun said coldly. Fire the quantum disruptors. The enemy ship tried to flee, but there was nowhere to run. Human ships appeared from every direction, their weapons charging with the sound of approaching death. The Vraxian vessel was torn apart so completely that its atoms forgot they had ever been organized into a ship. Dr. Taemin Lee had provided detailed intelligence on every collaboration facility where Council scientists had developed the biological weapons used against human colonies. Engineer Hae-jin Song personally oversaw the deployment of nanite swarms that consumed these installations from within. The research stations are completely destroyed, she reported to Admiral Hyun-woo. The nanites have consumed every computer, every data storage device, and every sample container. The technologies of genocide no longer exist. But it wasn't just military targets that burned. The human fleet targeted every individual who had profited from the betrayal. Slave markets throughout the galaxy found themselves under attack from ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. Major Sung Ho Yoon led the assault on the largest slave processing facility in Vraxian space. The complex held over 2 million beings, from dozens of species, including 30,000 human survivors who had been captured during the evacuation massacres. "Priority is the rescue of our people," Yoon told his assault teams. "But I want every slave trader and every facility guard captured alive. They have information we need." The slave traders had grown rich selling human children to buyers throughout the galaxy. They had expected their customers to protect them from any consequences. They had not expected their customers to be targeted for extermination as well. The galaxy's communication networks carried desperate pleas for mercy, offers of surrender, and finally, simple screams of terror. Council worlds tried to negotiate, offering reparations and promising to restore human colonies. But humanity's response was always the same: silence. They had begged for mercy once, when their children were being slaughtered. They had received none, and now they would give none in return. Lieutenant Commander Chang Wook Shin targeted the luxury cruise ships that carried wealthy core world citizens on vacation tours through former human space. These tourists had paid premium prices to see the ruins of human civilization. They called it extinction tourism, Chang Wook reported as his ship surrounded a passenger liner. Rich aliens paying to walk through human cities and take pictures of dead children. The passenger ships were destroyed with the same efficiency as military targets. The wealthy tourists who had found human suffering entertaining became entertainment themselves for the expanding clouds of radioactive debris. Communications specialist Na Young Huang intercepted increasingly frantic messages from Council worlds trying to organize some kind of defense. But their military forces had been scattered across hundreds of systems, and human attacks were coordinated with perfect precision. "They're trying to recall their fleets from the outer territories," Na Young reported. "But our ships are interdicting all the major jump routes. Nothing is getting through." The Council had made one critical error in their planning. They had assumed that destroying humanity's official military would end the threat. They had never considered that humans might have backup plans. Agent Yujin Nam led the assault on the slave auction house where she had been working undercover. Her detailed intelligence allowed human forces to identify every buyer, every seller, and every official who had allowed the trade to continue. "List of purchasers is complete," she reported as the facility burned around her. "We have names, addresses, and financial records for everyone who bought human slaves in the past 2 years. Those names became new targets for human strike teams. Wealthy core world families found their homes visited by polite, efficient soldiers who asked very specific questions about their recent purchases. The answers determined whether the families survived the interview. Chief Scientist Jae Hyun Ro deployed the quantum cascade weapons against the largest military formations that tried to respond to the human attacks. These devices turned entire fleets into expanding spheres of destruction, creating zones of space where matter itself forgot how to exist. "Cascade detonation successful," he reported after destroying a 100-ship Altarian battle fleet. "The quantum field is stable and expanding at 0.75 light speed." The expanding destruction zones served as warnings to other species considering resistance. The message was clear. Humanity had weapons that could unmake reality itself. In all, 30 days, the galactic order that had stood for 10,000 years was reduced to burning debris and radioactive wasteland. Of the 47 major spacefaring civilizations that had comprised the Galactic Council, 31 had been completely exterminated. The remaining 16 species existed only because they had provided aid to human refugees or had actively opposed the genocide. Their survival was humanity's first and only act of mercy during the war. Admiral Hyun-woo Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at a galaxy fundamentally changed. The stars still burned, but the civilizations that had betrayed humanity were gone forever. "Casualty report," he requested from his intelligence officer. "Estimated enemy dead, 437 billion beings. Human casualties, 12. 114 dead, mostly from boarding actions and equipment failures." When the fires finally died down, Admiral Hyunwoo Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at a galaxy fundamentally changed. The stars still burned in their ancient patterns, but the civilizations that had betrayed humanity existed, only as expanding clouds of radioactive debris. 3 months had passed since the last enemy fleet was destroyed. The shooting war was over, but the consequences would echo through the galaxy for thousands of years. Fleet Admiral Minho Jang established the new government from the ruins of Galactic Central. The massive space station had been rebuilt as a monument to human determination, its halls decorated with the names of every human killed during the genocide. "There will be no council," Minho announced to the surviving species during his first broadcast as Supreme Commander of Galactic Forces. "There will be no committees to debate the fate of civilizations. Humanity will rule absolutely, and our word will be law." The 16 species that had survived the purge accepted these terms without argument. They had seen what happened to those who opposed human authority, and none were willing to test humanity's patience. Commander Ji-won Park became the first human governor of the core worlds, overseeing the reconstruction of civilization under human oversight. Her first task was to establish new rules for galactic society. "Any species that shows aggressive tendencies toward its neighbors will be eliminated," she announced during her inaugural address. "Any government that oppresses its own people will be replaced. Any individual who profits from slavery or genocide will be executed." The surviving species did exactly as they were told. They had learned that humans were very good at keeping promises, especially promises about consequences. Captain So-Young Choi led the exploration fleets that ventured beyond the old galactic borders, seeking out the remnants of civilizations that had been destroyed by the Council's previous acceptable losses. Many were found, hiding in the dark between stars, barely surviving on ancient ships and forgotten colonies. The Kethvar had been reduced to a few thousand survivors living on a dead moon. The crystalline Zephyrians existed as fragments of their former selves, their consciousness scattered across salvaged crystal matrices. "You're not alone anymore," So-Young told each group of survivors they found. "Humanity remembers what was done to you. We will help you rebuild." These rescued species became humanity's most loyal allies. They understood that the new order wasn't just about human supremacy. It was about making sure that genocide never happened again. Dr. Tae-Min Lee established the Archives of Memory, vast databases that recorded every detail of the Council's crimes. The archives were built into the core of dead worlds, protected by quantum encryption and automated defense systems. "Future generations must understand the price of complacency," Tae-Min explained to his research teams. "They must know what happens when civilized beings decide that some lives are acceptable losses." The archives contained detailed records of every atrocity committed by the old galactic order, every biological weapon, every staged civil war, every species that had been quietly eliminated for the convenience of the powerful. The records would survive even if humanity itself was destroyed. Agent Yoo-Jin Nam created the Watchers, intelligence networks that monitored every communication, every gathering, and every whisper of discontent across human space. "We will never, again, be surprised by betrayal," Yoo-Jin told her agents during their first training session. "We will know about threats before they fully form." The Watchers were recruited from the survivors of destroyed civilizations. They understood that vigilance was the price of survival, and they were willing to pay that price forever if necessary. Chief Scientist Jae-hyun Roh continued his research into precursor technologies, but now his focus was different. Instead of Creating weapons of mass destruction, he worked on building monuments to the dead. His greatest project was the Memorial Network, massive stellar engineering constructs that would serve as eternal reminders of what happened when humanity's trust was betrayed. The constructs used controlled stellar manipulation to write messages in the light of stars themselves. From anywhere in the galaxy, anyone with a simple telescope could look up and see the names of destroyed civilizations written in starlight. The messages would burn in the night sky until the last star died. Engineer Hae-Jin Song took charge of rebuilding the galaxy's infrastructure, but under human specifications. Every space station, every communication relay, and every transportation hub was designed with hidden human monitoring systems. "We're not being paranoid," Hae-Jin explained to her engineering teams. "We're being prepared. The next time someone tries to eliminate an entire species, we'll know about it before they finish planning." The new infrastructure looked peaceful and efficient to outside observers. In reality, it was a vast surveillance and control network that could shut down interstellar travel within minutes if humanity detected a threat. Major Sung Ho Yoon established the new military academies where the children of surviving species would learn about galactic history and human expectations. "Your parents' generation failed the test of civilization," Yoon told each class of new students. "They allowed genocide to become policy. Your generation will do better because we will teach you how." The curriculum was thorough. Students learned about every species that had been eliminated by the old order. They studied the psychology of tyranny and the importance of standing up to authority when authority was wrong. Most importantly, they learned that humanity was always watching. Captain Dong-hyun Ko commanded the patrol fleets that enforced human law throughout the galaxy. His ships were visible reminders of what happened to those who broke the new rules. "We're not occupiers," Dong-hyun would tell his crews. "We're guardians. We guard against the kind of thinking that led to the Council's crimes." The patrol fleets visited every system regularly, not to oppress the local populations, but to remind them that someone was watching. Someone who remembered what had happened to the species that trusted too much. Lieutenant Commander Chang Wook-shin led the archaeological teams that excavated the ruins of destroyed civilizations, recovering what could be saved of their cultures and histories. "Every species has value," Chang Wook explained to his teams as they worked through the ruins of a Kethvar city. "The Council forgot that. We will not." The recovered artifacts and cultural records were stored in protected archives. Throughout human space, future generations would know about the Zephyrian crystal sculptures, the Mithran peace songs, and the Kethvar mathematical poetry. The galaxy would remember what it had lost. Master Sergeant Sun Woo-go established the War Crimes Tribunal that tried the surviving council members and their collaborators. The trials were broadcast throughout the galaxy, ensuring that everyone could see justice being served. "You claim you were following orders," Sun Woo said to former council speaker Vextar during his trial. "The humans you murdered were also following orders. The orders of parents trying to protect their children." The trials lasted for 2 years. Every surviving war criminal was given a fair hearing, with full legal representation and the right to present evidence in their defense. Every single one was found guilty. Communications specialist Na Young Hwang managed the information networks that kept the galaxy informed about human policies and expectations. Her broadcasts were translated into every surviving language and distributed to every inhabited world. "The rules are simple," Na Young would say during her weekly addresses. "Treat other species with respect. Protect the weak from the strong. Stand up against injustice wherever you find it. Follow these rules, and humanity will protect you. Break them, and you will join the Council in extinction." The message was clear and consistently applied. Humanity would not tolerate another genocide, another betrayal, or another acceptable loss. On Earth, families gathered around the memorial wall where the names of every human killed in the genocide were carved in letters of crystallized starlight. 12 billion names that would burn in Earth's night sky until the planet itself died. The survivors had kept their promises to the dead. The galaxy remembered humanity, and it would never forget the price of taking human mercy for granted. Admiral Hyun-woo Kim, now promoted to Supreme Admiral of Human Forces, gave the final speech at the memorial dedication ceremony. "We did not choose this war," he said to the assembled crowd of human survivors and alien dignitaries. "We did not choose to become the galaxy's guardians, but we accepted both responsibilities when the alternative was extinction." He paused, looking up at the names burning in the sky above them. "Our children will grow up in a galaxy where genocide is impossible, where betrayal carries absolute consequences, and where every species, no matter how small or weak, has the right to exist." The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for the dead, followed by an oath spoken by every human present. "We remember the betrayed. We protect the innocent. We guard against the darkness. This we swear by the light of dead stars and the memory of murdered worlds." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was too dangerous to betray, too determined to defeat, and too committed to justice to ever be ignored again.